Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Off the Shelf. I am Dawn Gepfer, your host of today's program, which is brought to you by the Atlanta chapter of Sisters in Crime. If you are not familiar with Sisters in Crime, it is an international organization that was founded to support and promote the professional development and advancement of women crime writers. Since its inception in 1986, which 40 years ago, membership has expanded to include all genders and any and all who are advocates for equality in mystery crime writing publishing. Membership has expanded to writers, editors, agents, booksellers, librarians, but most importantly, readers. And if you're wondering why are readers so important to a writing organization, that's because where is a book if it doesn't have a reader? It's on the shelf. And today's goal is to get our authors' books off the shelf and into the hands of readers. So, to talk about today, or to, I shouldn't say to talk about, to introduce today's author, I have to say before we get started, this is one of my favorite bios ever. And I'm gonna have to read it verbatim just to make sure that I get everything correct. So today's guest author is our fellow Sisters in Crime Atlanta chapter member, Constance Gillam. She is the author of the three-book, which I believe there's actually a fourth book, of the Lakota series, which is set on a fictitious Native American reservation in South Dakota. Constance's professional background includes work as a genetic counselor, health underwriter, bank proof operator, phlebotomist, real estate agent, and medical technologist. But through it all, her love for story led her to the profession of being a writer. She is originally from the Midwest, and she now calls Atlanta home. Welcome, Connie.
Thanks, Dawn. I had forgotten I had written all of that down as background, but yes, I've done it all.
That is great. And we're definitely gonna I'm very, very curious how that route led you to where you are now. But first, I want to say to the audience, number one, I want this, or we want this to be an engaging conversation with Connie. So we welcome your questions. If you want to ask something or make a statement, you can raise your electronic hand, or you can put it in the chat and we will ask it on your behalf, or you can just go ahead and speak up and ask your question. But we definitely want you to partake in this conversation with her. So now we are doing something new this year. We have started with several questions, rapid fire, but they end up not being rapid fire. They end up being conversations with our authors where we ask them some questions and what we call the interrogation room. And so Connie was brave enough to let me randomly select from about 25 questions. She said just to ask me anything. So I said, okay. And I did a random generator to select the questions that we're going to ask her today. So Connie, are you ready to enter the interrogation room?
I guess so.
All right. Okay. Question number one. When you write, do you prefer to use the computer or you pen and paper?
I am a computer person. When I get stuck, I become pen and paper. It just helps the process. It takes me out of my usual um, writing mode, and so and that's called desperation when I go to pen and paper. But mostly, I've got an outline, and I'm doing that on the computer, and I refer to it. But I would say I am a computer person.
So when you do go to pen and paper, are you like taking yourself out of your normal work environment and you're like, I'm gonna grab a notebook and I'm gonna go sit in this chair? And are you literally writing sentences and paragraphs, or are you jotting things down? Like, what does that look like for you?
Okay, it depends on how desperate I am. If I get really, really desperate, if I'm really, really stuck, then I start journaling. And it's a stream of consciousness. I just start writing about anything. And that gets me into a flow where things are loose and I'm not so hung up on a plot point or um, what's happening in the story. It just kind of frees my mind. So yeah.
I like that. I like that. I think that is a great writer's tip for our fellow writers that may be thinking like I need to mix things up every now and then. What's something I can do? I think that's great. All right. Next question. If you could meet any author, living or dead, who would it be?
Oh wow. Gosh. Um, I like John Hart. Um, one of my favorite books by him is The Last Child, and I love the way the themes come together, the story comes together, the characters, and I just like to sit down and have a conversation. How did you come to that particular story? How did you how long did it take you? How did you make just to dissect the whole book? I think that would be really wonderful. The problem is he's doesn't write or produce frequently. So I think it's been at least three or four. Uh, I'm looking over at my bookshelf. Uh, it's been, at least 4 years, 5 years since his latest book.
Wow.
So, but yes, I think that would be someone I would really like to sit down and have a conversation with. There are lots of them, but his name came to mind pretty quickly.
And I hope that happens for you. I really do, because I think that to be able to meet a favorite author and have not a just hi, how are you, nice to meet you, but an actual conversation is definitely a treat. And so I do hope that you get that opportunity. And I'm familiar with John Hart, but I'm not familiar with that particular book. So I'm adding it to my to be read pile, which grow.
Right. I think it's my opinion, it's his best. And he has, several, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's my favorite.
All right. Now, this kind of the next question is kind of similar, and I think we know at least one answer to this. But who are your top five author dinner guests?
Ah, okay. Now hmm, they're not all crime.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah. Um, Diana Gabaldon, um, John Hart, as I mentioned. Let's see. I hope you guys didn't hear that. It sounded like something was breaking upstairs. Um, Sandra Brown. Um, I feel like I need my Kindle. I'm trying to see over at my bookshelf. Um, hmm,
Living or dead?
yeah. Um, James Baldwin.
Oh, yeah.
And how many more do I have?
One more.
Um, I think it would be gosh, what is his name? Justin? Um, can't think of his last name. He
Mhm.
did a vampire series,
Oh,
The Passage. Cronin.
oh,
Cronin. Yeah.
all right. Good list. All right. To make that question even more challenging, maybe I'm going to add to it. And what are you serving? But I will not do that to you today.
Thank you.
What is your least favorite genre to read?
Horror.
So
That
Stephen
came
King's
out
not
quick, didn't it?
coming. Yeah.
I didn't have to think about it. I know everyone thinks the world of Stephen King, and I admire him just for uh, his ability to put out a book and year after year, but mm-mm, nope,
Which character in your books is most like you?
none of them.
Okay.
Because I think the women that I write, I think are fearless and they go after what they want. And that's one of the characteristics that I give them. And sometimes I let fear hold me back. And so so the women usually are, they go after what they want. They may not be uh they may not make a wise move every step, but they at least try. And I think that's one of the characteristics that I admire and I don't always use, but yes.
And are there any cultural influences that shaped the world or the characters of your books?
One of the things I'm not sure that I'm going to answer this the exact way that you want, but one of the things when I first started writing, I wanted to give the world a cultural mixture of people as characters. And that was one of the reasons why I've always had an admiration for uh, the Native American uh, culture. And that was one of the reasons I, I picked that as my the subject of my first book, but I paired it with an African American woman. And it was more about two different cultures that and what they had suffered through American history. And and I wanted that to be, and that's not really the theme of those books, but I wanted those two characters to come together. And for some reason, I can't think of the word that I'm thinking of, but marginalized.
Oh,
So, you know, two marginalized characters and cultures coming together. So, and then the goal was I have another book that probably will never see the light of day, but the main character is Japanese. He's a Japanese FBI agent, and his grandparents, this is how long it's been since I originally wrote the book. His grandparents were in a concentration camp here in the US, and how that affected
yeah.
his life and his outlook on the world. So I'm always looking for different cultures, That's just part of what I enjoy. Yeah.
I think that's a good segue. And that was the last question, believe it or not. But I think that's a good segue into us starting to actually talk about the Lakota series and how it started for you and where the inspiration for it came from. So will you tell us about that?
Sure. The inspiration it came from a movie. And I can't remember the name of the movie now. It's been probably at least 20 years since I saw it, but it was actually a historical, and it was right after it was during the Reconstruction period for in American history. So, roughly in the 1870s,
Mhm.
1880s. This school had been started for exceptional Black students, and they came in contact with these Native American renegades. They had been um, they'd been captured, and the person who was in charge of them was prior Union soldier, and so he brought his way of rehabilitating them was to bring them to a school and let them uh, assimilate. And we know now, of course, that children were taken off the reservation and were you know taken away from home, but these were men, grown men. And anyway, it's about the relationship that happened between one of the students, one of the female students, and I would call him the leader of this group of renegade soldiers. So I thought, okay, what in love a love affair develops, and I thought, okay, what would happen to that couple in the future if I took them out of that historical context. And
Mhm.
so basically it became I modernized the story, and we see like the descendants of those two characters
Oh.
in a modern setting.
Mhm.
So that was how it started.
Very, very clever, I think. So, when you got the spark for this idea, what what did you do next? Like you're like, I what like did you did you start outlining it? Did you think about it for ever and then start drafting? Like what was the process for you to go from pondering what might have happened to that couple or in that how they, or how that would be for them in the future to actually writing the book?
At that particular time, my sister and I had started um, tracing our family tree.
Mm.
And, we found out obviously a lot of stuff that we didn't know about our ancestors. And I thought, okay, what if there's been an oral history in her family about an ancestor? And I created a character who I later wrote a story about as a prequel to the Lakota series. But this ancestor of hers um, escaped slavery, made her way to the plains, was captured, and then was ran into a Lakota um, um, native who was attracted to her and took her back to his particular area in the plains. And so, but something happened to her and she died. And, but no one knew what really had happened to her. And for some reason, I just realized later, much later after I wrote the book, that it was more speculative than
Mm.
than anything else. So she, the character Zora, who's the main character of the Lakota series, became obsessed with this character, and I think she kind of had she had a lot going on. She was really stressed, and she decided, in order to get her life back together, that she would make a journey to South Dakota, to this reservation, to see if she could figure out what happened to this ancestor. And that's where the story starts. She arrives on the reservation, and becomes a pain in the butt to the tribal police officer, because he's got other things that are more important than trying to figure out, what happened to this woman's ancestor.
Mhm.
So that's basically how the story starts and their relationship.
Okay, so you mentioned the prequel, and I believe you wrote a prequel to
Yes,
it is after first you wrote your first book, which is Lakota Dreaming.
right.
Okay, and then you wrote the prequel.
And it's a
Okay,
historical prequel. Yes,
okay. So my
yes,
question is, because we know that the premise of Lakota Dreaming is that Zora is drawn to research this ancestor that was murdered, and I guess it's a cold case, like, never solved, right?
Mhm.
Um, so how much of the prequel had you fleshed out before you wrote the story, or did you write Lakota Dreaming first and then said, "Oh, I need to tell the whole story, let me go back."
Yeah, and that's it exactly. I had written and published um, Lakota Dreaming, and I thought, you know what? You see this character in Zora's dreams, but you don't know very much about her. And so I thought, okay, I'd like to tell her story. And one of the things that I do, someone asked me how I come up with my characters' names.
Oh, that was one of my questions, so good. Tell
They're
us.
they're my ancestors.
Oh, love it.
So Julia, who is the character in the historical prequel, is my second great grandmother. That's her name, Julia. And Zora is not a family name. I just took that from Zora Neale Hurston. And but other characters are, they are some great grandparent or great great
Mhm.
grandparent or, you know, um, a cousin or whatever. So
That is, a very nice way to pay homage to your ancestors.
to keep them
Love it.
alive.
Yeah.
Someone once said you die twice, once when
Mhm.
you physically die, and then when someone last says your name.
Yeah, I've heard that too, and it's um, very it's sad. Like, it makes you sad because you realize, oh, at some point, there's not going to be somebody alive to say the name because they don't know the name.
They
So,
don't
yeah.
remember. Yes.
Yeah, so
Yeah. And
very
so that's my way of honoring
mhm,
them,
yeah,
to put them in a book.
mhm.
And
I can't think of a better way. I think it's an excellent way. So, when you first wrote Lakota Dreaming, had you intended it to be a series?
no,
So what
no, I
happened?
didn't. And that was, I think for me, that I wish that I had more foresight. And I think that's been one of the problems that I've had with this series, is that um, it wasn't really designed for a series. It was a standalone. I had this great idea. It turned out to be an interesting book. And then I thought, okay, I've got it published. What the heck do I do now? But the problem was, I had fallen in love with the characters and I didn't want to say goodbye. So I thought, okay, so what's happened to uh, Zora and John after a year? What are they doing? How is she adjusting? Someone who's raised in New York City and is now living on an Indian reservation. So that's how I kind of got into writing the series, and it um, makes it difficult at times because the story, I like procedurals, and of course, because John is the uh, police officer on the reservation, a lot of the story is crime. And so it's like, okay, so how do I keep her in the story? And because I get email, they the readers love the romance between the two and wish that they could see more of them together, but it's difficult when you have someone out there trying to solve a crime. He's not going to go home or meet up with his girlfriend and have lunch, you know. It's so I had that was the problem that I had, making her relevant in the
Mhm.
series.
Mm.
So sometimes it gets a little interesting. So
Yeah, and I can see where that would be a challenge, and because she's so integral in the first book that as you like, okay, it's sort of like Jessica Fletcher and Cabot Cove. Like, how many situations is the amateur going to get herself in when you actually have a police officer who's that's his job. So does as you wrote the next two books, did John play a more central character and Zora more of a sideline character, or is she
yes,
okay?
yes, yes, that's what happened. And
Mhm,
I could not, she didn't have the skills to help him solve a mystery or
mhm,
bring someone to justice. So I had to have her own little storyline going, where she was relevant but not necessarily solving the crime.
mhm,
But their relationship, was front and center
mhm.
um, in the story.
I just thought of something. um, the TV show Macmillan and Wife. Which I don't remember it. I know that it was on TV because my dad loved police dramas, that it was on TV, but if I'm remembering correctly, he was a police officer and his wife was his wife, and I'm not sure what role she played in solving, the crimes or whatever, but when you were talking about that, that's exactly what popped in my head. It was like, I don't know, maybe she did get involved. I don't
I
recall.
you know I remember the title. But I never saw. I don't think I ever saw that series. So
Yeah, I was too young to, I guess, grasp what it was about, or I probably wasn't paying that much attention. Once upon a time, there was one TV in the house, and Dad controlled. It wasn't a remote; it was a knob, and it was controlled by my father. So we watched what he wanted to watch, and or we, found something else to do. But I remember Rock Hudson, and I want to say Susan St. James was the actress who played his wife, but I could be wrong. Be wrong. But okay, so back to Connie. All right. So now what I want to, you've mentioned multiple places. So I want to do a little bit of logistics here. First off, you're from the Midwest. Where are you from?
Indiana. I grew up in Indianapolis. Um, I got married and moved to Ohio, and my husband and I were in grad school there, and then he got a job, and we moved to Atlanta. I didn't want to move to Atlanta because we moved here during the Atlanta child murders,
Oh,
and my children
my
were
gosh.
small.
Yes.
And I told my husband, I said, I don't know about this, but we left. We were living in Columbus, and I remember the day that we left. It was 0 degrees. It was February. It was 0 degrees. There was probably about 2 feet of snow that had been uh, pushed, cleared and was on the side of the road. And I went down with him when he went to interview. We got here, it was 40 degrees. And by the time we left, it was 72 degrees in February. I
Was
told
it
him, I said,
was it all in the same day?
no, it was like we got here on Friday, but by Sunday it was 72. I told him, I said, okay, if they offer it to you, take it. They offered it to him, and
Mhm.
so here we are.
So here we are.
Yeah.
So, you have written though about South Dakota, or is it North Dakota?
South
South
Dakota.
Dakota. And also you mentioned New York City. So these are areas I'm assuming you don't have experience living in or
Well,
familiarity with?
I've never been to South Dakota. I ended up doing a lot of research online, watching a lot of shows that took place there, doing a lot of, you know, basically learning online about those areas. Um, Found a lot of video on YouTube. New York, I've been to many times. I've never lived there, but I've visited probably a
Mhm.
half a dozen at least minimum. It's a great city to visit, but I wouldn't want to live there. So,
And it tends to be a location that a lot of stories take place in. So you get exposed to New York City very easily, I feel like, without like having to live there or to spend a good amount of time there. But the Indian reservation and South Dakota, and you mentioned the plains, and I thought, wow, that's different. You don't necessarily come across that too much, I guess, except maybe in some westerns or
they have a lot of information on um, Pine Ridge, that's the Indian reservation that um, this reservation and fictitious reservation was
Mhm.
modeled after. So I found a lot on that. I've talked to a lot of people. Um, I know a few people who have lived on reservations. So that was how I got my experience. And
Mhm.
if I continue with the series, I definitely need to go to South Dakota.
Yeah,
Just,
I was gonna
yeah,
ask if it's on your bucket list.
yeah, it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never been, but I understand it's beautiful and, it can have some harsh winters. One of my friends did move there. Little Atlantan, all her life, and she moved to South Dakota, and
That was harsh.
oh, yeah, yeah, and, like, the first week, her car wouldn't start. She had to walk to work. I mean, she just has just great stories, about it. But the one thing that she came back with, she goes, "Well, it's pretty. It's beautiful. I can't take that away from it." Okay, so now we had touched on as part of your bio this really long and interesting list of different professions that you have had. Why don't please tell us more? Like
Well,
start from the beginning and tell us how you moved about.
one of the things is I've always been a reader. And I've actually, even though I had not planned to be a writer, I was a writer. I think I wrote my first little book. I was probably 10. And, but, I was told, and I'm sure like other writers, you can't make a living.
Yeah.
You can't make a living doing that. So, I went to college and started out. I got a degree in sociology, but I ended up working in the medical field. And then I realized I liked medicine. So I went back to school and got the idea that I was going to go to be a physician. But
Wow.
physics and I did not do well together. In fact, the family joke is my son, um, who was 5 at the time that I went back to school, I had to take him to class with me. And he would sit on the floor. We were in the balcony. We were at Ohio State. So was a huge class. And we were in the balcony because I didn't want him to disrupt the class. He was on down at my feet. He was about 4 or 5, about 4 or 5. And he was coloring. And when we'd get home, he would give me back the lecture. it was just like, okay, I know this is not for me. My son understands more of this lecture than I did.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, so I thought, okay,
Mm.
I like medicine. I have to do something else. So I ended up with the classes that I had going into medical technology. And that's for people who don't know medical technology, it's basically it's working in the clinical laboratory. It's part of the pathology, clinical pathology section of the hospital. So, where if you have your blood drawn,
Right.
that blood comes to the lab, and there are different labs. I worked in immunology. And so, you know, I did all the testing, gave all the results back, put them in the computer, did any interpretations that the physicians needed. So so I did that for 30 years, but I was writing. I was writing, especially, I hope no one ever sees this that worked in the hospital. Not that it mattered anymore, but, and I worked in the evening. And at the end of the evening, if I was finished, then I would just turn my computer to Word, switch on Word, and start writing. So,
Were you writing the Lakota series at that time or something else?
no, something else. I have a couple of books, as they say, that are under the bed. I mean, I actually had some books that turned out to have promise, especially the first 50 pages. Funny story. So, one of the first books I wrote, it was more of a soap opera, and I don't know if the audience is familiar with romance writers of America, but they would have a national contest, and they would have one for both for the unpublished and the published. And so I submitted this one, my first story, and I became a finalist. Well, for me, that was the biggest thrill in the world. And I found out while I was at work, they had been trying to track me down. And I found out while I was at work, I was the only one working that night. And one of the pathologists came through the lab looking for something. I ran up to her, gave her a great big hug, and said, I'm finalist. And she's looking at me like, okay. But that was how excited I was. So,
Yeah.
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 So that book is another one of those that's under the bed. The first 50 pages obviously were good enough to final in a national contest, but the rest of that book was a hot mess. So
Do you think that of those several books that are under the bed, are there any that, maybe someday I'll go back and try to
I've I've tried, and
no.
it's just like it just was the concept was great, but the execution not so much.
Well,
So
but you're more experienced now, so you might be
that is
able to.
harder.
Yeah. Okay.
It's easier to just write a whole new book than try and it is, than try and figure out what's wrong and what would make it better. So, yeah, they'll stay under the bed.
So at some point you started writing something that was obviously going to go the distance. Although probably at that point you thought, here we go again. Another story I'll map out in my head and get it down, but more than likely I'm going to box it up and put it under the bed with everything else. But yet there was something different about this one. And what do you think it was about Lakota Dreaming that you took it to the finish line and submitted it?
I think the thing is, it's just experience. I had been taking workshops,
Mhm.
listening to lectures, um, writing other stories, figuring out what was wrong. And I had, there were published authors that were kind enough to tell me, okay, y- you need to do this, or maybe this might work. So I was getting help. And so, and then I was submitting it to contests, not the whole book, but the uh, beginning of books, and it was finaling. It was continually finaling wherever I would submit. So I knew that my skill was getting better, the story was getting better,
Mhm.
and so I just kept going. So actually, it was not the first book that I finished. It was actually, I think I had one other book that was a young adult book that was more of um, kind of a paranormal that I wrote, but this was the first crime fiction that I finished.
So you have this amazing career, and as we said in your bio that you had these different jobs that were very interesting and very varied, and some coincided with each other. Like you mentioned, working in the was it the pathology department, and so I'm assuming that's when the phlebotomist opportunity came in. But there was also the real estate and some other things. But um, I guess it eventually led to you having an opportunity to start this next chapter as a professional writer. And so how what did that look like? Where were you in your life when you really started tackling this and saying, I'm gonna write this Lakota dreaming story? What was
I
happening?
I was writing all the time I was raising my children. Um, but I'd write a chapter and I did not know how to pull a story together. So I'd had lots of first chapters that I just put away. The idea would come, I worked that first chapter up, didn't know what to do with the rest of the story, and I put it away. And what happened was my youngest entered high school, and I thought, okay, if I'm going to do it, now is the time. So I got up the courage to join a local chapter of Romance Writers of America. And I actually was a member for 6 months before I got up the courage to actually go to a meeting. And actually, it was one of the best experiences because they were very welcoming. Um, I got brave enough to start submitting things that I was writing. I went to all the workshops, I went to a lot of the national meetings around the country. I just took advantage of every opportunity, and basically I grew. That my skill at writing a story grew. I'm still growing. I learn different things, different, characterization, plotting, pacing, so I'm always learning. And the one thing that I never gave up is reading. I don't read as many. I used to read maybe about 4 or 5 books a week. Well, now, I don't have the time to do that, but I still read, and I'm always learning. And I am much more involved in watching, how, stories are put together. I watch a story, but sometimes I'm not watching the story. I'm thinking, okay, I like how they pulled that together. I like how they, so it's more about learning from whatever I'm watching. So, yeah.
So what right now, what is like a typical day in the life for you? Like,
Okay, I get up in the morning. I take the dog out, feed her, sit down at the computer, and I start to write. And, now I have to get up, and because of age, I have to get up, every so often and stretch and whatever, and then get back and start writing. So I
well,
start writing usually about 9:30 in the morning, and I finish at 4:30, and there's breaks in there. And if I've really got something that I need to finish and tackle, then I may go to 6 o'clock.
Mhm.
But I don't have, my children are grown. My husband, who is one of the greatest supporters I could possibly have, cooks his own dinner.
As he should.
and and will come to me sometimes when I'm writing, midday, and say, "Do you want me to get something for you for lunch?"
Oh, mhm.
And that's my day.
Mm.
And I
So
do that 7 days a week. And the thing is, I feel guilty because I am, it's not a, it's not a chore. I'm doing something that I love. And I
Mhm.
keep thinking, oh, you know, I should be doing this, this, and this. I should be cleaning. I should be, but it's like, I really love what I do. And it's always, I go to bed at night and I'm working through, a problem with the story. And sometimes my husband will say, shut it down. Because he knows that brain is
Yeah.
working over there. So yeah.
And what you're working on is, well, first off, what I'm gonna say is, it sounds like you went from your full-time careers and you've come into another full-time career because you give it 7 days a week, multiple hours every day.
Yes.
That's amazing. And I think you are honestly the first author I've ever talked to on this program who commits those kind of hours and has that dedication. So that's impressive. Are you always working on the same story during that time, or sometimes is something else needling at you and you're like, "Oh, let's."
No, I've got blinders on. If
Mhm,
I'm writing one story, I am working on that story. Um, I and I can't. I wish that I was one of the authors who could write a short story, come back to the main book,
mhm,
write a short story. I can't do that. I've got to finish what I'm working
mhm,
on. And I've just been very fortunate that I have people around me that if I need some help, I can shoot them a text, or, they're writers too. So I don't want to, you know, intrude on their writing time. But, they'll come back to me in a little bit and, make
mhm,
some suggestions or whatever. And I have an agent who is very patient. I mean, she'll listen, she won't make suggestions. She just lets me talk through what I'm doing. And I really enjoy having her. She's a prior editor for, I don't know if you were familiar, my goodness. The New American Library. I'm
mhm,
trying to remember what that was. This was a publisher. Trying to remember who that was, which big five that was part of.
mhm,
It was an imprint, but she was an editor for them for 15 years. So,
mhm.
so she just lets me talk through it. She asks me questions that makes me think. And so I have a lot of help.
So we have a question from the
Okay.
audience.
Mhm.
Ralph Ellis, he wants to know, what is your agent's name and how did you find her?
Um, Her name is Sandy Harding. She works for Spencer Hill um, Agency. I actually, okay, so I've had a couple of agents, um, but my one agent that I have through Spencer Hill, um, she she's semi-retired, and she gave me the name of a couple of agents within the agency that she thought might work. And basically, I kind of interviewed two of them, and um, then I kind of realized that Sandy was probably the better fit. And so I asked her if she would take me on as a client, and she said she would. So, yeah.
So, can you tell us what you're working on right now?
I am working on a story about an investigative reporter. She's going through a difficult period in her life. She's been very focused on building her career, and she is she lost her mother about 6 months ago. She's feeling some guilt because even though she brought her mother into her home, she hired healthcare people to take care of her on a daily basis so she could continue her career with this television station. And now she's being phased out. And so, she has a number of support people in her life, and her godfather is he disappears. And so it's partly she wants to know what happened to him, but the other thing is it's a chance to run away.
Mm.
Run away from this job that they're asking her to do, something that she doesn't really want to do and doesn't think is ethical, and then run away from the fact that she wasn't there for her mother.
Yeah.
So she comes to Georgia. She's in Chicago. She comes to Georgia, and she gets involved in something a lot more complicated and deadly than she had ever thought. So
Then from what she
basic
was running away from.
I'm sorry, say that again?
More complicated and deadly from what she was running away from.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's a challenging one because she's not a law officer, so we're not dealing police procedural, and she's running into people who are not who they appear
Mhm.
to be. And she has to figure out, okay, who are these people, and how are they involved in her godfather's disappearance? So,
And so how is that coming for you? Like, do you have an anticipated completion and publication date?
well, I've written the first draft,
Okay.
um, and I sent it to my agent, and she had a lot of questions. And so now I'm going back through the revision process. I think I've got it to a point that I like it better, and I think that it is a lot more exciting, and it moves a lot more. But
Mhm.
it's keeping all the pieces together. I have to slow down, and I want to go fast. And so I don't know. I could finish it in 2 months. I may be
Mhm.
looking at it at Christmas. I don't know. And I hope it's not Christmas, because the whole goal is to have this published at least, or at least have an offer to
Mhm.
publish it by mid-year, which is
Mhm.
June, and June is now approaching the end.
Yes,
So
it is.
yes.
Yes,
So
it is.
I guess when it's done, it's done. So, but
Um,
it's an interesting book.
yeah, it sounds interesting. And do you have a title for it or a working title?
Yeah, the working title is Buried Secrets, but it's going to change because I Googled all the books that are
Mhm.
buried secrets, and there must be 30 of them. So I've got to come up with a better title. But that's the current working title.
Well, I am definitely looking forward to that. So definitely keep us posted. Now, It's hard to believe, but we are coming to the end of our
Oh,
hour.
wow. Okay.
So, what I have started doing is asking our guest authors to share a book with our audience that they like. So, and that they recommend so that we can grow our to be read piles even more. So, Connie, do you have something that you would recommend?
And I remember you were reading a book that I had read twice already.
Yes.
So I'll throw that one out there, Frozen River.
Mhm.
Um,
That one's good.
I think it's Ariel Lawson,
Yeah.
Ariel Lawhorn. I'm not sure about her
Yeah.
last name. I've got
Mhm.
my Kindle. I have it on Kindle, so it's not
It's
in the
awesome.
bookshelf.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, this is really strange. I read a book by a prior member that I haven't seen him at the meeting. Um, his name is Roger Johns. Is it
Oh,
Roger
yeah.
Johns? Yeah, I read that. I read his book, and I really enjoyed it. Um, I've got it on the bookshelf, and I'm trying to see the title because I don't remember the title. But Dark Dark River Rising, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
That
That could be it. Yeah.
and that was I really liked the beginning of that. And anything Michael Conley.
Oh, is he one of your favorites?
Yeah, he is. I was just looking. I probably haven't read every book, but I've definitely read at least 15 of
Wow.
his
Wow. Big
books.
fan. Big fan.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you, those of you in the audience and those of you that are going to watch this online later. Thanks so much for partaking. And thank you so much, Connie, for spending your Saturday with us and telling us more about your writing life and the Lakota series and how that came to be. Very interesting.
Thank you, Don, very much for having me.
Yes,
I
thank
had
you.
fun.